Thank you. People sneak over in there. I'm not sure quite how that happens, but it seems to happen a lot.
I wonder if it has to do with updates or
It does seem to happen. That yes,
um,
I have had that happen myself, I think.
If you don't restart your computer after the update, you won't end up as a panelist.
Yeah, I think you told me that one time, Robbie. And now I do the update and then I go out and go back in again.
Uh,
So good advice. I didn't have to do it. Did you have to do a Zoom update, Robbie? Yeah, I didn't either. Huh. Wonder where everybody is. Well, they have 3 minutes, so
I had to listen to the final Jeopardy question.
there you go. I like your background scene there, Robbie. That's very nice.
Oh, thank you. I finally figured out that I could actually use a fake background if I didn't have a green screen.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's funny though because when I was sitting in a different location, when I would move, I would disappear, and I think
Oh,
it's because of the sweater I was wearing.
oh.
But when I moved over to a better lit spot, it seemed to work better. So
Well, we can see you, so
yeah.
that's good. But we only have two of us here at the moment,
Well, I know
which is
Harold's gonna log on because he texted me that he had to do an update. So, but he
I.
texted me like 15 minutes ago that he had to do an update.
Oh, so maybe some people who haven't been in a city meeting have to do updates. Because
I
I
don't,
only heard from,
yeah, I mean, no, well, Chris is here, so that's three.
yeah, I only heard from two who couldn't come. So, hey, Chris, are you out in DC? How bad is the snow out there?
It's bad for DC. It's nothing for Wisconsin.
My nephew lives out there, and his son had a snow day yesterday. He was like, "Woo!"
Yeah, everybody in DC completely freaked out. I mean, my friend, one friend of mine, his wife grew up in Philadelphia, and he used to be a professor in Nebraska. So, he's like, yeah, okay, so there's snow, but everybody else, you know,
Yeah, yeah. My sister lived out there for years, and growing up in Wisconsin, it wasn't a big deal for them, but for folks not from Wisconsin, it's a bigger deal, I guess.
well, they also just don't have the equipment to clear the snow.
Yeah, that's very true.
And a lot of
Right.
people don't have boots.
Yeah, right. One, let's see, 1, 2, 3. We only have four members at the moment. Hopefully, some more are signing on here. Aiden, did you hear from anybody else? I heard from Bill and from Kaylee that they wouldn't be able to attend.
I heard from Lynn Olson. She needs a link. I was gonna send her Ariana, if you're able to send her a link. Otherwise, I can send her a.
yep, I'm
Yeah,
able
I'll
to.
Ariana,
Oh, okay.
can you send Lynn Olson a link?
Yep.
Thank you.
But other than that, I haven't heard from anyone else.
Okay. Maybe everybody's just doing Zoom updates or something. I don't know. 1, 2. I only see 4 of us at this point who are members. We'll have to give it a couple minutes because we don't have a quorum yet. Hey, Denise is here. Yay.
Chair, how many is quorum?
6.
Okay, I'll text some colleagues.
Thanks. I've got 1, 2, 3. Whoop. They keep flipping around. 1, 2. They flipped again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we have quorum. Yay. I will call the Transportation Commission meeting for January 8th, 2025 to order. Ariana, if you could read the instructions, please.
All right, welcome to our virtual meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff, members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak or ask questions. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ariana. Aiden, if you could call the roll, please.
Sure. Juliana Bennett. MGR Govindarajan. Dina Nina Martinez Rutherford.
Present.
Barbara Harrington McKinney. Ann Kovich.
Here.
Robbie Weber.
Here.
Denise Jeffs.
Audio now. I'm here.
Pepe Barros. Chris McCahill.
Here.
Harold Kleems.
Here.
And then Bill Bremer and Kaylee Jameson are excused, and Lynn Olson should be joining soon.
Okay, and when she does join, we'll welcome her because she's a new member to the Transportation Commission. And since she's the second alternate, but since we have a couple people excused tonight, she would be able to make motions and vote this evening. So, did everybody have an opportunity to look at, yes, Alder Martinez Rutherford? Can't hear you.
I turned it off instead of on. I just want to remind you that I am going to have to leave around 6:30. So if quorum is compromised, please let me know and I can go on my phone for part of the way.
Okay, it looks like Lynn Olson just joined us. Welcome, Lynn. So now we have 7, so that gives us a cushion there, Alder, if you have to leave at 6:30. And Lynn, we'd like to welcome you to the Transportation Commission. Thanks so much. Lynn is also a member of the Disability Rights Commission. So, Lynn, did you have anything else that you'd like us to know about you in terms of your interest for the Transportation Commission?
No, but I am very happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. You are the second alternate, but because we have a couple people missing tonight, you are able to make motions and vote this evening. So we monitor that and watch for that as throughout the meeting so that we can make sure that we get the and the alternates can always participate in discussion, whether they can vote or not. So we're always interested in that. And I see that Alder Govindarajan joined. So we're up to 8 now. Yay. Okay. So that gives us an extra cushion there. Great. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes from the last meeting? If so, would somebody make a motion? Harold.
I would move approval of the minutes.
Okay, there's a motion. Robbie?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no hands, I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote, unless somebody wishes to vote no or abstain. Okay, the motion is carried. Aiden, do we have anybody signed up for item 1?
We do not.
Okay, and let me just ask, while I'm thinking of it right now, do we have anybody registered to speak on any of the items?
No, we do not at this point.
Oh. Okay, thanks. Just let me know if we do.
Will do.
Thanks. Any disclosures or recusals this evening? Okay, seeing none. We'll move to item number 2, review and approval of Metro Transit bus stop changes.
Hi, everybody. Mike Czechvala from Metro Transit here. So this is a list of proposed bus stop changes that would be implemented in the 2025 season. A lot of these are associated with construction work that needs to happen. So, for example, we are adding boarding pads at all of our stops. Sometimes when we add a boarding pad, we at the same time move the stop to far side, move it around the corner. In some cases, bus stops that cannot be made accessible, for example, don't have crosswalks or other pedestrian infrastructure associated with them. We close them. We are also working to implement the new service in Monona, so we're excited about that. So every year, we have some of these updates, and we like to get them approved in a way that we can make sure that we're building the right thing as we're going through the construction season. So with that, I have my colleague Tim Sabota. He is here, and he's going to walk you through the details of our proposed bus stop changes. Thank you.
Hello,
Thanks,
everybody.
Well,
And the chair, just remind me, I share my screen as the typical process. There's not a master
Yes.
shares. Thank you. So if I am now sharing a screen, just as confirmation.
it's really small, Tim.
Yeah, if you can do full screen instead of showing, because we see all the border of your computer screen.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I'll try one more time.
Yeah, it's really tiny. Very hard to see.
Let me try one thing. I'm sorry. Bear with me here.
Yeah, no problem.
Just going to do some internal rearranging on my screen. All right, if I've now swapped that, and then, bear with me here. Is this getting any better?
No, I think what you want is the slideshow option.
Thank you.
I think is on the bottom. I'm not sure, but.
Oh, on the Zoom itself?
Yeah.
Thanks for the tips, Robbie.
Thank you. Getting that.
Now it's too big.
All right, so if I back up a little bit, get this out of the way. Is this closer? Absent that you got the stuff on the side and the top, is this going to be good enough for government work? I apologize.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just much more useful for presenters if they present just the slides and not their whole desktop.
Understood, yeah. And this is sharing the screen. I've got two monitors here, but I apologize. So I guess what I'm going to be doing here is just going through these overview maps that were in the packet. Starting off on the far west side, this is Route F in the Old Sauk Trails Business Park. Furrier Drive specifically, there was historically a pair of stops between the Deming Way and the John Q. Hammonds intersections. Undeveloped land to the right, some single-story buildings to the left. Proposal is to eliminate those existing stops in the middle of the block that do not have an accessible pedestrian crossing between them, maintaining the existing bus stops that are wheelchair accessible with accessible curb ramps down at the John Q. Hammonds and up the Deming Way intersection. I will proceed forward unless I hear otherwise. This is out in the Watts at High Point area. Two different things. The first one is there's a pair of stops at the intersection of these private driveways that are proposed for elimination, again, predominantly because there are not existing curb ramps or marked crosswalk across the 4 lanes of traffic there. The other change is taking an existing bus stop that is immediately adjacent a curb ramp and moving it a bus length beyond that curb ramp and crosswalk to get the bus out of the crosswalk and to open up better visibility at that pedestrian crossing where a stop bus would not be obstructing visibility of the crosswalk or the vehicles driving in either direction. Out in the Raymond at Muirfield area, there is an existing bus stop directly opposite, again, adjacent to curb ramp at the Canterbury Road intersection here, proposing to put in a new bus pad, the bus length west of that crosswalk to open up visibility in the intersection. On Muirfield, heading northbound, proposal is to move and create a new bus stop around the corner from the existing stop on Raymond after the bus makes the right turn, just to get the stop bus out of the curbside stop sign area and around the corner into the 2-lane eastbound Raymond. Scrolling down further, in the Raymond at Whitney area, this is more tied to stop spacing, on-time performance of Route E trips, taking the pair of stops that are between Hammersley Road, which is a major east-west corridor crossing Whitney, Raymond Road, and the Meadowood Library being up here, consolidating the stops that are the 2 blocks north of Raymond and 2 blocks south of Hammersley into a new pair of stops that would be centered at Barton Road, midway between Hammersley Road and Raymond Road, and putting those in typical far side intersection locations. The other one is a spacing option here on Raymond Road, keeping the stops by Meadowood Library at Whitney Way, which is again a major north-south street, eliminating the stops at Leland, which is a T intersection, again maintaining the stops to the west of Leland at Cameron, which is again a north-south access route for pedestrians to get to Raymond Road at those bus stops. Raymond at Piping Rock, this is where we have an existing stop that is north of the Piping Rock Road intersection, but it is right on the curve. It is somewhat of a blind bus stop where that bus stops curbside and traffic is coming around that corner. From a more of a safety perspective, we're proposing to put that before the Piping Rock intersection, about 20 feet before a pedestrian crossing there. Again, setting it back from that crosswalk for visibility, but otherwise putting it where oncoming traffic is going to have a better view of that bus, signaling to pull curbside to actively load and unload. Reitz Road, this is somewhat similar to Whitney Way. Again, here is Raymond Road to the south, Hammersley Road to the north. There being 2 sets of stops currently, proposing to realign those to a single location midway between Raymond and Hammersley at the Knox Lane intersection. Knox continues to provide westerly access into the neighborhood. There are no streets to the east of Reitz into the back of Home Depot area there. In the Allied Drive area, proposing to put the Route D2 stops on the side streets of Allied Drive. So creating a new stop opposite the one that is on Lovell, putting 2 new stops here on Genuine, just immediately east of Allied Drive. That would be eliminating the stops that are on Allied Drive, where the stop bus is currently positioned between the curb and a center median, blocking the directional travel lane. So by moving those onto those side streets, it's getting those buses onto those side streets where they're not impacting traffic and visibility on Allied Drive itself. The other one that is kind of a private development change, but it is going in from an illustrative point, is the McDonald's that is here at the corner of Red Arrow and the Allied Frontage Road, is reconstructing their driveway approaches, which will impact the existing stop that is on Red Arrow, but they're closing the driveway on the frontage road. That created an opportunity to put a bus stop there and also get a pad in for a potential shelter installation in that piece of the right-of-way that will be reconstructed from driveway approach into standard sidewalk and terrace with that private development contract. Mineral Point near Speedway. This is a bus stop spacing proposal. This is the Glenway signalized intersection right here. Westmoreland Boulevard is the crosswalk by the Midtown Police Station. Proposal is to eliminate the stops that are the short block east at the Tepfer intersection. So spacing would go from Glenway down to the Westmoreland and so on. In the Kendall at Franklin area, again, this is a bus stop spacing where we've got the existing stops at Ridge and we've got existing stops at Franklin for the Route E that goes up and down Franklin. That spacing from these stops at Ridge over to Franklin Avenue is under our typical spacing standards. Proposal is to eliminate those stops where the bus is making those turns on and off of Franklin in the proximity of those pedestrian islands. Regent near West High School, with West High's recent and the school district's recent rebuilding, there is kind of a new bus stop here on Highland north of Regent, the existing stop on Speedway after Regent. There's always been the stop on Regent after Highland by Virginia Terrace. The proposal is to eliminate the second set of bus stops, that is the short block east at Vista. And so from these stops in the Highland Speedway intersection, the next pair of stops would be down at the Regent Allen intersection, which again is our more typical bus stop spacing. This is also going to allow a little bit more on-street parking. That is, I mean, I've seen when I've been at my daughter's events at West High, cars will park in these bus stop zones curbside, versus the ones down here are typically free of parked cars, allowing the bus consistent access to those curbside accessible loading areas. On the Capitol Square, the proposal is the local bus stop that remains on South Pinckney Street, adjacent the Glass Bank building, be eliminated. Routes E, F, or I guess E and R, which are still the 40-foot buses, would continue to stop on West Main Street, would continue to stop on East Mifflin, similar to routes A, B, and F stop on the blocks of West Main and East Mifflin. The elimination of this bus stop is largely to provide more consistency of service with the consistent special events in the summer, where this bus stop being eliminated will not need to be detoured or compensated for during special events for those Route E trips, so that Route E's passengers will have a consistent experience of they can get on or off the bus on West Main, on or off at East Mifflin, but won't have to be consulting a special event calendar to determine if they can get on or off the bus at this particular stop for the various special events. This is out on East Washington near Eagan. There is a pair of stops immediately off of East Washington Avenue that were historically important when Route A was stopping on East Washington curbside at Eagan. To the extent that the BRT platform is now at Independence, these bus stops are very close to the stops down at the short block away at Easttown Boulevard. So the proposal is to maintain the stops on Eagan at Easttown Boulevard, but then have those buses go to or from the stops up on Independence at East Washington, but getting the buses out of that busier turn area at the signalized intersection.
Tim, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. If you could go back up. Yeah, so with BRT construction and transit network redesign, these were always sort of intended to be temporary. Before BRT, we did not have a traffic signal at
Independence.
Independence, yes. We did not have a traffic signal at Independence, and so to accommodate transfers between the G and the A, we had to have that stop down there at Eagan. But now that the signal's in, it's not really needed for that. And Route A doesn't stop there anymore, so it's really not serving its purpose anymore. Sorry, I just thought I'd add that detail.
Thank you. The final, or I guess the next series of ones are related to Route B in North Madison. There is a new proposed overhead charger looking to be installed on the north side of Northport, the westbound travel side of the road west of Kennedy. Currently, the Route B goes in a clockwise manner, so west on Troy, north through Central Wisconsin Center, and then east on Northport. If that overhead charger goes in there, and when, that would require that the Route B go in the opposite direction, westbound on Northport, around Central Wisconsin Center, and then east on Troy. So this is illustrating where that overhead charger with a bus stop would be planned for the B going westbound here. The next stop anticipated is on Knutson, across from the entrance of Central Wisconsin Center. That's proposed for installation with the city's Knutson project. Another stop over here on Green Avenue, generally opposite from the second entrance to the Central Wisconsin Center. Proceeding from there, the stop that is currently opposite this part of the state of Wisconsin facility, which does not have pedestrian access in that drive aisle, is relocated to the south side of the road where the bus would be stopping curbside at their entrance where there is pedestrian access into the facility down there. From there, proceeding east, the stop, this is by Troy Gardens, would be Kitty Corner across the way. Scrolling down, it kind of gets bifurcated, but again, so if the B is going westbound, this is Goodland Drive. This would go Kitty Corner across the way. Stop at Barbie would not be maintained, but there would be a corresponding stop Kitty Corner at School Road at the new traffic signal there. Coming eastbound, the stop west of the railroad tracks, which are right here, would not be maintained, but the stop at School Road, just east of the viaduct, would be moved across the street. The mid-block stop right here would not be maintained, but the Goodland one would be replicated on the south side of the road from the north side of the road. And then getting into the Northport end of the Troy Loop, westbound, there'd be the stop on Northport westbound after Troy Drive. The stop on the south side of the road by the gas station moves up here. And then the particular stop down by the Culvers on Troy, west of that area, ends up over on Northport. So when that bus is coming east on Troy, turns right, would stop curbside here, the existing stops at the Warner Park Community Center would remain as part of that two-way section of Route B. And now getting into the final section, these are bus stops in Southeast, predominantly related to the city of Monona, joining the system coming March. The first one that we are coordinating with the city of Monona is a request to move the bus stop on Broadway from before the Bridge Road intersection signal area to beyond that signal, a typical far side orientation for both directions. Route G currently operates along Broadway and up and down Monona, but that has historically been closed door service. But with the new partnership with the city of Monona, we are looking to add new curbside stops for Route G in the Falcon Circle area where there's a pedestrian crossing of Broadway right here. Adding new stops for Route G and the light blue line being the new Route 38. This is in the Broadway at Monona intersection. The grocery store is down in this quadrant. New Route 38 stops that are going to be on Broadway east of there by the signalized crossing. Proceeding up Monona Drive, Route G would have new stops at the Femwright Drive intersection and pedestrian crossing area. And then this is continuing up Monona Drive. Route G is going north and south, would have new stops beyond the signal at Dean Avenue in each direction. Route 38 would have a new bus stop here off of Dean on its one-way, or its loop through this area. This is Route G only, and then Route L is on Monona Drive north of Flom Road, the Follett High School area. So again, setting up a new series of stops in the signalized intersection crosswalk area by the Walgreens, which would replace the existing stops that were just east of there beyond the city of Monona limits in the city of Madison. So that essentially would mean that the existing stops at La Follette High School, Groveland would be maintained, but then the next set of stops for the G and the L would be on Monona Drive after the Flom and Nichols signalized intersection area. And then continuing up Monona Drive, this is just Route L that goes north-south, and the Route 38 comes in. I'm sorry, this is Dean. So this, the earlier one, this signal, just to correct myself, this is Owen, not Dean, down at the southern end of Monona Drive. Apologies. So we are now back north of Flom Road, Buckeye Road being up off the top of the page. Again, Route L going north and south would share a pair of stops with the Route 38 that goes on and off of Dean, north of Dean Avenue. That is a signalized intersection right there. And then a new pair of stops that would be north of the Cold Spring Avenue intersection, which is by Monona Grove High School, would be added there. And that concludes the run through of the attachment in the packet.
Thanks, Tim. Aiden, just double checking. We've you sent out an email comment. Do we have anybody registered to speak?
We do not, no.
Okay. So comments or questions for Tim or Mike or Mick? Anybody? Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Need to find a raise hand button. Thanks, Tim, for walking through all of these. I have a few specific questions about the stops and then also some larger ones. The Franklin and Regent one, I think you mentioned part of that is pedestrian network connectivity. One note about that is that some of the roads like Shepherd, Ridge, Stevens don't have sidewalks in that area. Did you take that into account?
Yes, that is something that Metro Transit has been working with city engineering to look at the ability for a future city project to consider sidewalk along Ridge Street that would lead up to the new signalized crossing at University at Ridge. But those existing stops on Kendall has sidewalk on both sides of the road. Those are wheelchair accessible stops on both sides. Franklin has sidewalk on both sides. Those are accessible bus stops right there. So to the extent Ridge and Shepherd do not have sidewalks, that is where if the city is currently using the edge of the pavement as the sidewalk, the walking on the side of the pavement as opposed to a grade separated, curb separated facility.
Right. Okay, yeah, I'm glad it's on the radar. Hopefully we can get sidewalks on those streets. And I don't think it really matters depending on the stop locations because you have to walk on the sidewalkless street either way. So, okay, good. The stops along Broadway in Monona, you made sure that the pedestrian facilities on there are well aligned with where you propose the stop locations so that people can cross.
Yeah, and again, just so Broadway and Bridge, this is a signalized intersection with signalized crosswalks. This Falcon Circle is a marked crosswalk, and I forget if they have a flashing beacon there, or if it's just they basically have curb ramps and a marked crosswalk there. Same thing over here on Broadway, that this is a signalized crosswalk just before the cemetery and the Ahuska Park area there on Broadway. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe making sure that Monona is aware, Broadway, if you don't have a signalized crossing and you don't have an RRFB, it's probably not great for crossing. So maybe Monona, or I guess it's a county highway, if I'm not mistaken, maybe they can prioritize getting some RRFBs in those locations. Great. Some overall questions, maybe in line with one of the public comments that came by email was about. Can you explain a bit? People may have, okay, so you're closing stops to make the system more efficient so that you have consistent spacing between stops so that the bus doesn't have to stop every little block. And so some people may be like, well, but if nobody uses those stops, then the bus rarely has to stop there anyway. And so why don't we just keep them open? Can you explain that?
So I think part of the reason is the presence of stops with the city of Madison's historic direction to Metro Transit to make all bus stops wheelchair accessible with a boarding surface, and the corresponding requirement that implies removal of snow in the winter is a capital cost and an ongoing operating cost for those surfaces and snow removal. And so that is something that the city is looking to pay close attention to as far as where investments are being made and what investments are required once those capital investments are made. In some instances, I think that email had asked specifically, for example, about the Furrier area. That is one where it would not only be capital project costs for boarding pads, but capital projects for curb ramps, pavement marking, whether you'd need a refuge island in the center of that for traffic engineering. So a lot of things would go into creating a fully accessible, usable pair of bus stops at a mid-block location that does not currently have pedestrian crossing facilities. So that goes into the thinking in this area. Relative ridership as well, that Metro is starting to look at our new APC data at a stop level basis. This is not a significantly high level of ridership, again, in part due to the undeveloped land to the west and the low density facilities on the west side of the road. They're not being, it's mid-block, so there's not cross streets that people are walking to those stops except from the undeveloped land or the low density here. The stops down at these intersections have greater ridership because there's a walk shed down Deming away from the route, up John Q. Hammonds away from the route. So, yeah.
Okay, thanks. That is very helpful. And then a little bit, can you talk about the overall process? I think we've had a couple of these pretty long lists of bus stop changes, some of them associated with network redesign, some of them associated with BRT opening. Are you base, do you have a sense, like, is this going to keep going? Like, are we going to have another list of 50 stops a couple months from now? Or are we now at a point where, like, okay, we have this kind of figured out, we have assessed all the stops, and yeah.
So it would be my reaction that historically lists were much longer due to route network change, due to finding the most accessible location to create an accessible bus stop from a engineering and concrete installation perspective. As we're now going forward, I think it's going to be more of a maintenance issue. I could use, for example, this Raymond at Muirfield. The memo I think that Mike and I drafted talked about some of these areas are in the districted sidewalk program, where under the city sidewalk maintenance program, 2 older districts have their sidewalk maintenance needs taken care of. That includes the bus stops, just for efficiency of contractor mobilization, doing concrete bus pads, being similar to sidewalks. But again, so where there'd been a bus stop made historically adjacent to curb ramp because it was quick and dirty, we're now looking at a more appropriate design where we're moving that bus pad out of that crosswalk in a more formal / permanent location with the route network design. Assumedly, this kind of transit corridor is going to be there going forward. So setting that up. This one, I mean, I know that there was a lot of development going on to the west of here with the old Marty Farm. So having that stop around the corner in a standard far side location just gets it in that standard far side location, but would then be, if there was ever route service coming Raymond Road from that Marty Farm area, it would now have a bus stop pad that it could pass continuing east on Raymond Road without having to install that at a future date. But again, this one would serve the existing trips that are on Route E for that reason. So if that hopefully helps, as far as the list should become more of a maintenance housekeeping kind of. It's not necessarily replace the boiler in the basement, but it is kind of putting new paint on the walls in the sense of moving the stop from opposite to far side of an intersection kind of situation. So
Makes sense. Yeah.
Thanks, Tim. Did you have a comment on that, Mike?
Yeah, I think Tim got most of it, but before transit network redesign, we changed our routes a little bit more often, and so we kind of had a lot of things that were moving around. We had a lot of substandard stops. We're getting closer towards having all stops be kind of in the place we want it, at the space we want it, with accessible boarding pads. So we're kind of getting a lot of the work done that we've been trying to do over the years. We hope to have a lot more stability with transit network redesign. So, I think we are going to see kind of a reduction in these kinds of lists. That being said, there's always going to be stuff that comes up, and we'll probably be coming to you kind of once a year around this time frame. There's always going to be little bits of cleanup work, little bits of changes. For example, this year we're adding the city of Monona, so that's kind of the bulk of it. But I do expect it to kind of drop down and be a little bit more of a maintenance type activity with the reduction in the length of these documents.
Okay, great. That's helpful. And then last question. Do you post about proposed stop closures at the stop, saying like this stop is proposed for closure, Transportation Commission hearing is happening this, if you have feedback, email Metro?
That is my understanding, yes. And I don't know if McRoosh is on the call to confirm what's been done in recent years.
We haven't done that before this meeting. We usually post them before we close them, but we did not post it before this meeting. We did not advertise that.
Okay, I think that would be a good thing going forward because, people generally probably don't read the TC agenda. Alders might not be aware. I think going through all this is another good method, but I think the best way is to just put up something at the stop so that people can be like, oh, my stop is going to be closed, I might have thoughts on that. I think that would be good in the future.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree.
Right. That's what I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Harold. Aldo Govindarajan, go ahead.
Thank you. I think what Harold just brought up is a great idea. Is there anything that we as a commission might have to do to make Metro do that like procedurally every time going forward? Or can you guys just do that?
Mick?
I'm sending myself an email right now to remind me for next year, but I will keep that on our list. I think we can handle it ourselves, but we're always open for the guidance from the TC, but I'm putting a note in my calendar right now to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. Other comments or questions? We would need a motion to approve the recommended bus stop changes. Harold?
I would move approval.
Denise?
Audio now on mute.
I can second.
Viewing webinar.
Hey, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Denise, is that still from your seconding, or did you have something that you wish to discuss? Okay, thank you. No problem. Any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain or wishes a roll call vote. Okay, I'm seeing no hands, so the motion is carried. Thanks very much, Mike, Tim, and Mick.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Next, we have update on Safe Routes to School planning project.
All right. Thanks, Anne.
Hey, Renee.
So since we have someone new, I'll just do some introductions. First, I'm Renee Calloway. I'm the assistant director here in traffic engineering. And I have with me tonight Colleen Hayes, who is our pedestrian bicycle outreach specialist. And she is the project manager for our Safe Routes to School project. So she's going to do the presentation tonight. But since I did the applications for the grant funding that got us these projects, I'm going to help answer some questions. We are not asking for a vote on anything tonight. This is just informational so that you kind of know. You've seen the grants come through for approval of the signatures of applying for them and then for the signatures on the contracts. And so we wanted to give you an update and kind of lay out kind of the timeline and what we'll be working on with the two grants that we've gotten, and answer some questions so that you're kind of aware of where things are with this and are hearing back from us after seeing just sort of some very basic documents. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Colleen to do the presentation.
Okay, hey everyone. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to see what happens here. Okay. So let me see if I can get, okay, can you all see this? Are you getting the bigger thing or are you getting this like?
We're getting the first slide and we're getting two versions of the same slide, one big and one small.
Okay.
You just have to go up and change your display setting to the opposite of what it's at.
Got it. Now, okay, there we go. Okay, thank you.
Very good.
Good.
Okay, I think we have it. Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen. Like Renee said, I think I've met most of you before in person and or Lynn, welcome. It's nice to see Lynn as a new member. I was excited when I saw that you were joining the TC. So like Renee said, and she gives herself not as much credit, she's here to, I always joke that she's the smarter, but it's not really a joke. It's kind of true. But she does know a little bit more about the process leading up to this. So she can help answer some questions as well. The Safe Routes to School Planning Project is a collaboration between City of Madison, Wisconsin Bike Fed, and the Madison Metropolitan School District, which isn't showing up on this side of the slide, but on the other one. All right, let's see if I can. Now I'm advanced. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so our planning team is with the City of Madison, Renee, and as many of you know, all of you should know, Kevin Licky, which I was calling him Lukey until today when we had our little lunch. Kevin Licky is our new Ped Bike administrator, and then myself from the city, from the Wisconsin Bike Fed, we've got Ben Varick, who is our high school Safe Routes to School educator. And sadly, we just lost the K-8 Safe Routes to School educator, Natalie, who had been here for a while and had started doing the work with, we didn't lose her like in a dramatic way. She's moving to Portland because she's a young person and that's what they do these days. And so she started on the work and with the meetings that we've had. And I'm not sure what the timeline is for replacing her position. We've Cedric Morris. He is the school security director over at MMSD. And then we have Tool Design. Sonia Heckel, she's our project manager and for the project. And Sarah Schooley is doing some additional work. Sarah's based out of Milwaukee, but she's been coming in and she helped with some of our observations when we were at Southside Elementary last month. EQT by Design, Annette Miller and Matthias, and then the School Traffic Safety Committee, which is just a group of folks that meet a couple times a month, consisting of some of the folks already on the planning team and then some other folks, including the bus company representatives and parking enforcement from the city, and Lieutenant Jen Hanna from MPD. So okay, I see. All right. Okay, so quick overview. We received the TAP grant and are developing an overall framework. We're developing a prioritization for school planning. So what schools we're going to include. We're going to have some individual school plans starting with Southside Elementary over on Badger Road and Rimrock. Hawthorne, which is just off Fair Oaks and East Wash, and Leopold Elementary over on Traceway near Fitchburg. And we are developing well, and by we, I mean Tool has developed a school traffic safety plan. They've developed one for Southside, which will be in the next couple slides, but we're hoping to have a template then that we'll be able to use also for any school in the district going forward. And then reviewing of areas designated as unusually hazardous transportation areas. We received a second TAP grant for additional school plans. So I think we're going to be up to 25 schools that we can, over the course of this plan, accomplish. We have equity and youth focused engagement. So Tool Design has created a survey. I put the sample survey in this document for staff, students, and other community stakeholders. And then EQT by Design is coordinating, and they're going to start leading some focus groups targeting specifically Hmong, Hispanic, and Black families. We're doing a review of crossing guard locations and designing school travel safety materials. So the timeline, what we've worked on so far, we secured the grant a little over a year ago. We met and reviewed with a couple of agencies who submitted RFPs. We settled on Tool Design. The Safe Routes team met for a kickoff meeting to review our goals and schedules and roles, responsibilities. We've met bi-weekly since then, and we've got Southside, Leopold, and Hawthorne as our initial schools that we're going to work on. And then, like I said earlier, we did visit Southside to observe pickup and drop off, which is fascinating. Pick up and drop off at many of our schools, but Southside is very interesting. And developed a draft traffic safety plan, which I will link to next. So you can see this. This was developed by Tool. It was kind of a not too wordy and a little more visual. And so ideally this plan can be a template. This is a draft, so of course would take any feedback. But this could be a template going forward for how it would look with other schools. And that would be the front of it. And then the back is talking a little bit more about, like this on the right here, it talks about driving and parking. So this is mostly, for families, caregivers who are picking up students and dropping off students, talking a little bit more about, street signs, no parking, no stopping, standing, or parking, what all that means. Our schools have, and each school has a different system based on where their school is located and what the traffic patterns are like around their schools. So that is that. And then that is pretty much it. I just have my information here. We have the Safe Routes to School website. I also posted at the end. It's very much a work in progress. It is just when we revamped our website a few months ago for traffic engineering, we included the Safe Routes to School plan, but we're still going to be adding to it, obviously, as the project progresses. So we actually are meeting again this week, getting back into it. A few of the members, including Sonia, are on vacation for this month. So I think we'll really be jumping back in earnest, probably at the end of this month. So I'm gonna get out of the screen sharing. Okay, there we go. All right.
Thanks, Colleen.
No, thank you, Anne. I appreciate it.
Aiden, just double checking that we don't have anybody registered to speak here.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Comments or questions? A lot of great information, a lot of great grants. Great project. I live in the area just off Moreland Road. So yeah, traffic around here is interesting for sure.
Yeah.
Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. Maybe you said something to this, but I'm looking at the plan that you showed, and it seems like it's a lot of instructions for parents and students, and I'm just kind of wondering what the plan is to sort of get folks to follow the various instructions. Like, I'm sure you could pass this out to folks. They might look at it once and forget it, but like there's got to be some signage and various aspects of actually implementing this stuff.
Yeah. So we do have signage, around our schools based on going to talking about observing all street signs and laws. And we have some, even prior to this grant, have smaller handbills. We communicate with the schools to put out in their parent newsletters, to put on their websites. Some schools will put it on their social media pages. And then we do have the test team, the traffic enforcement team that goes out, and they kind of do, and Renee can probably clarify this more, but they do more of a, circuitous, like they visit each school somewhat regularly. But if they do get more complaints, they might end up targeting some other schools. And normally what they would do is give a warning, especially at the end of the year, or beginning of the year rather. But then as the year progresses, they would start, ticketing folks who, but, there's no way, we just don't have enough. We don't have enough, officers to be at every school every day. So a lot of it really is just education and getting the word out to parents and families.
Yeah, I can just build on that. Like, first, we want them to have a solid plan that makes sense and prioritizes safety and kids walking and biking, keeping crosswalks, people back from crosswalks. So a lot of our schools have no plan. They've had a lot of turnover in principals. They don't know that a plan ever existed. So we're really just trying to make sure everything is like up to date. All the signs are correct. We've really considered safety of users. And then we try to educate the parents, and we work very closely with the schools to do that, but also with the parking enforcement team, because we do have a lot of unsafe parking kind of behaviors over crosswalks, double parking, all kinds of stuff, as well as kind of unsafe traffic behavior, sometimes by parents, unfortunately, but by other people traveling through the neighborhood. So we really try to do a lot of education. Unfortunately, sometimes we do have to have some tickets written, things like that. But it's really like, I think, a partnership between the city and the school district. And then with the Bike Fed coming in to help with getting more kids walking and biking, and really like that element. But I think since the pandemic, so many of these have been lost or have just don't work anymore. Or like with Southside is a very new school that started with kind of a less than ideal plan. It also includes the town of Madison. So we will have with this eventually also a series of improvements to make walking and biking safer and easier. So you will see that through our Safe Streets program once we start having those, that we'll be trying to get those programs in. And we started with Southside. Anne lives there, but like there's a lot of town of Madison areas. There's a lot of issues that need to be resolved to really get kids walking and biking. So that will be the flip side of it, is like we're going to see infrastructure improvements that, as we know, reinforce the behaviors you want to see.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Other comments or questions? I had a question about the walking school bus program. I see that you have one in my area, and I was excited because of some of the rather unsafe conditions you were referencing, Renee. Having an adult, walk with the kids is a great option. Are you seeing more usage? We've talked about that program a couple of times here at TC, and it just seems like a great way to help encourage kids to walk and help it be safer for them.
Yeah, I could speak to that.
Sure.
We have, unfortunately, with the walking school bus, it's kind of dependent on, it's not necessarily a program the city runs, nor is it it's kind of, the Bike Fed has some resources to share with people who are trying to run a walking school bus in terms of, for lack of a better word, swag, like, vests, and they've got some fun big umbrellas. So if it's raining, but honestly, it's been really school dependent. And so we, as an example, Kennedy Elementary just started a walking school bus. And it's because they just were labeled a community school. So they have a few more resources. So they have a community schools coordinator. But they were starting this walking school bus. At the same time, though, in contrast to like Lakeview Elementary has a walking school bus, I was there last month on a very cold day. There were still 31 kids walking. On nicer days, there's 60 plus kids walking. And they pay their staff that work the walking school bus to do the walking school bus. Now they do have some folks that volunteer, and I help out on Thursday mornings, but a lot of it is there's no consistency across the school district in terms of supporting the walking school bus. So even Kennedy, which does have extra funds now because they're a community school, they're not using that to, the principal wanted to wait and see if it was going to be successful and then pay some people to do it, which isn't necessarily, you kind of need people to show up and do it. So it's been, and then also the schools that leave, that have early start schools. When I used to do it at Hawthorne, we would leave at 7:05 from East Madison Community Center, which is very early to get people to want to volunteer. So it's a great idea. It's just, I think if we could figure out a way to pay walking school bus leaders, it would be even more successful. But it's, it's a tricky proposition. But it's, there are a lot of schools are giving it a shot. And sometimes it works. And, Mendota, I've done theirs. I did, LVM has a pretty successful one, but they have a very strong leader who's also working at the school, and he's just really committed and dedicated to it. Does it every single day. So it just kind of depends often on the school as well.
Yeah, and I would say that's one thing, as we work on sort of overarching safe routes to school framework recommendations, that we'll probably have some recommendations around how you can create a sustainable long-term walking school bus program, because we know they can work, but we also know that they're fraught with challenges when you're just trying to rely on pure volunteers to do it. So that's one of the many things that we'll be looking at as we try to find ways to better institutionalize our program and ensure it has great longevity in its programming.
Yeah, thanks. I was just excited to see one in my neighborhood. That's awesome. Other comments or questions? A lot of great work being done here and a lot of great grants that you worked on and were able to obtain. So excellent. Anything else from anybody before we move on? Thanks very much, Colleen and Renee. Next, we have review and approval of the traffic signal priority list recommendations for further study. So we have Yang and David and Jerry, I think.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome, Lynn, to the commission. Since we have new members, I will start with a kind of brief introduction of myself as well. So my name is Yan Tao. I'm the director of the Traffic Engineering Division, which is one of the divisions of the DOT. Actually, starting from this meeting, I'll be back to be the executive secretary for the Transportation Commission. So past 4 years kind of flying by when I was not in that role. So thanks to Justin and Stephanie for filling that role. Now I'm back to the role for another 2 years. So if you need anything from me, any help, feel free to let me know. But get back to the item. So the traffic signal priority list is a mechanism for us to evaluate and prioritize, requests from the public, elected officials, and sometimes from staff to add new signals, to our infrastructure. And very rarely, actually, I think this is the first one for a long time, also get some removal requests. So those all be evaluated through the process. Here, I just want to quickly thank our residents, our orders, for sending in requests for us to look at it. And I want to thank our staff, especially Jerry Shipa and David Hansen, those two of my colleagues, for doing most of the work behind the scene, collecting the data, evaluating the requests, and present recommendations to you today. So it's a two-step process. And so today, the first step, we're looking for your recommendation and guidance on narrowing down our study scope, maybe to just a few locations for new signals, and maybe one of the locations for potentially remove an existing signal. And we'll be back maybe in a few weeks or so, and after we do more study to present you our final recommendation for your approval. So with that, I want to thank everyone on the commission for the continued guidance on this. And I'll turn over to my colleague, David and Jerry.
Thank you, Yang. My name is David Hanson. I'm the section lead for electrical and traffic engineering. So we oversee and maintain all the traffic signals, street lighting, and the fiber communication systems between those assets. If it's part of that, as Yang had mentioned, that there is a process that we go through that, in essence, prioritizes traffic signal installations. And as Yang had also mentioned, this may be the first time that we're actually bringing forward a removal of a traffic signal. So what I'll get into a little bit more is a timeline, I guess I'd say, of really what to expect here. So as Yang had said, these requests come in from various sources. Predominantly, we get them through residents. We have a generic email that will get some of these in, or they may email us directly, or they'll go to the alders, and then the alders will email us. We take each of these requests in, and we look at the locations in a little bit more in depth, and then we will collect some data on them. So there'd be like the road tubes that you may see out placed. Those are actually county traffic. We'll take a preliminary cursory review of any of the crash reports that we may have. And one of the things you're going to start seeing us look at is going a little bit more historical when it comes down to crash patterns, because the warrants suggest that you look at a 12-month period of that. But we've been doing this, but we're going to take more of a focus, I think, looking at more of a 3 to 5 year pattern, looking at trying to identify patterns, see if there's anything more within that data that we can use to come up with some better solutions and recommendations. So then that initial information we bring in, we look at 9 different sets of criteria called warrants, traffic signal warrants. These are criteria that Federal Highway Administration publishes, and the state of Wisconsin also has their supplement that, in essence, can clarify anything that may have maybe some interpretation, or maybe take some shoulds to shalls that may be within that document. So we compare it to these 9 sets of criteria for signal warrants, and if it meets one of these warrants, doesn't necessarily mean you need to have a traffic signal at that location. It's more or less it's an indication that we should be looking at traffic signals as an option at that location to remedy whatever issues we're identifying in the warrant analysis. Then we're at where we are today. At today's meeting, this is the first of 2 meetings. Now, prior to this meeting, after the analysis was done, we sent out some emails to the alders and neighborhood committees, the neighborhood resource teams, and other persons that have been requesting the traffic signals directly to us. So then Jerry will be presenting the recommendations list to you after I'm done with this overview. And then ultimately what we're looking for from you would be your TC's recommendations on this final study list. So we'll take that list then that you recommend, and we'll do a more detailed analysis and ranking of those intersections, and draft a final report then to you, which could be relatively soon, depending on how quick we can get that done. But the normal time frame is to get that information over within a couple of months, at most, typically 3. And once we have that, then we will be at meeting 2 of 2 at TC. Then again, we're going to present this information, but in a little bit more detailed fashion. Maybe have some more graphics or videos, or something that we think may aid in the discussion rather than talking about warrants themselves. And then at that time, you will tell us which ones that you'd like to have traffic signals installed at. So that would really conclude your portion of that. And then that's where they say the fun begins for us engineers, and we get to design these traffic signals and then ultimately create an assessment district for them, as these traffic signals obviously are not free. Just a general planning estimate that we normally use is $250,000 for a traditional traffic signalized intersection. And so they're not inexpensive to install, and obviously there's soft costs that go with that, with having to maintain them, staff to do that, energy costs, things like that. Then ultimately we construct the traffic signal, and then once we get the final as-built for them and costs, then we can actually finalize that assessment schedule that we would then finalize those costs, and then those assessments would go back forward to those that would be receiving them. So that's the overview that I have for you today, and I'd like to turn it over then, and probably I would presume we want to just take questions and at the end in mass, and then I'll turn it over to Jerry Shippa, who's a traffic engineer in our section, and he'll go over the summary of the TSPL report. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jerry Shippa with City Madison Traffic Engineering Department. I'm going to share my screen and just kind of go over the list of recommendations. Leave. Share screen. All right. Yeah, so I'll just go through this list one at a time. But before I start that, there was a few questions and comments that came up through email before this, so I did want to address those. The first one is just a typo in this document. We have up here Milwaukee Street and Sprecher Road, but we have down here Milwaukee Road and Thompson Drive. That should be street. It was just typed out incorrectly. We had another email regarding left turn arrows at Cottage Grove and Acewood. That's separate from this. We were in 2024 planning on installing a protected only left turn at Cottage Grove and Acewood, but that got postponed to 2025. So right now we're kind of bundling it up with a few other projects to get that out for bid this winter. We got an email on Cottage Grove and Maher, which we'll kind of discuss here, but I think those were the big or the emails we got before this meeting. And then it should have probably been a little bit more clearly noted here. Odana and Potomac is a removal, not an addition, so you won't find it on the list because it's already a traffic signal. So yeah, with that out of the way, we'll just go through the list. These are all the locations that we had requests over the year. And then we just outlined what we've already done and what we plan on doing. And what we're looking for is just an approval of this list as shown, or if there's any changes that you'd like to see made, we can add that and then report back at the next meeting or at the next time we bring this to the commission. So the first intersection is Milwaukee Street and Sprecher Road. This is on the east side. It's an two 4-lane roads intersecting, pretty big intersection. It's been on the list it's been studied a few times in the past few years. There's some development going on out there that was recently wrapped up, and I think more coming. Potentially a ramp with the interstate in the area. So there's kind of a lot going on out there today and then probably in the next 10 years-ish. So we've already collected volume and speed. We are, as David said, we want to look at not just the 1 year, but the 5-year crash history, see if there's any trends. We're proposing to do a manual peak hour delay study. And with that, we have someone in the office that can collect drone footage, and we want to get a snapshot, kind of a short video of in kind of the worst times what this intersection looks like to kind of pair with the numbers. So it's not just looking at numbers. It's kind of nice to see. And then we want to compare potential intersection control. So it's right now it's an always stop. We want to compare an always stop to a signal and just kind of see what the differences are. If we signalize that, how would we operate it and what would that look like from an operation standpoint? The next intersection is Henry Mall, University Avenue, and Henry Mall Campus Drive. This is on campus. It's currently a marked mid-block crosswalk. About 300 feet to the east is Randall Street, and about 300 feet to the west is the Babcock. Both of those intersections are controlled by traffic signals. We got requests for this one from both drivers and pedestrians over the past few years. The most recent one was actually from a driver. So we are looking at, we've already collected volume and speed for vehicles. We've already collected manual pedestrian counts at both of these crosswalks. We're looking at collecting, doing a crash review, and also taking kind of a step back because we do have an OCR order for the intersection of Babcock and University, which I think was actually at this commission fairly recently. So you should be somewhat familiar with that. But there's a few dynamics in this area that might change people's walking and routing. So we want to kind of take that into consideration if we make any changes to the crosswalk or to the crosswalk control or adjacent signals. Do we think any of that would maybe help address some of these concerns in a better way? The next one is American Parkway, Ratman, and Hebker. This is on the far northeast corner of Madison. It shares a municipal boundary with Sun Prairie. It's very similar to Milwaukee Street and Sprecher Street. It's two intersecting 4-lane roads. A lot less volume here than at Milwaukee and Sprecher. But similar to Milwaukee and Sprecher, there may be some nearby interstate access changes that could change traffic patterns out here. We've already collected volume and speed report. We have some recent delay and turning movement counts, so we're not looking to do a lot more of that this year. But we want to refresh the 1 and 5 year crash history. And we'll definitely be kind of keeping more regional traffic changes in mind when we look at this intersection. Next is Old Middleton Road and Rosa Road. This is also very close to Old Middleton Road and Old Sauk Road. Really anything we do to any one of these intersections, we got to kind of look at the other one because they're so close. And this is another intersection we've studied a few times over the past 6 or 7 years. Nothing has changed out here from like a nearby land use to change traffic patterns. So we're just looking at updating the volume and speed, comparing that to past volumes, and then reviewing the crash history to see if anything stands out that might make us want to change anything here. Milwaukee Street and Thompson Drive. This is another intersection we've studied somewhat recently. So we've already collected volume and speed. We're looking at updating the crash history. And similar to Milwaukee and Sprecher, with a potential ramp access of I-94 off Milwaukee Street. This has the potential to really change traffic along Milwaukee Street because right now the main driver of this intersection being on this list is drivers heading south, trying to make a southbound left turn from Thompson to Milwaukee Street. They're having a hard time doing that. And we suspect that's because people are coming off Highway 30 to Thompson to Milwaukee Street because there's really no other access to Milwaukee Street and Sprecher, that area. So if there was a ramp further to the east, then potentially some of this volume gets shifted over to that ramp in Milwaukee and Sprecher. And so we just want to make sure that we're not maybe adding a traffic signal to both intersections where in a few years it doesn't make sense at one, but does make sense at the other. So there's kind of more regional traffic pattern shifts in the future that we suspect might happen. Next is Cottage Grove, Maher, and Royster Oaks. This is on Cottage Grove Road. This is 1 block to the west of the signalized intersection of Cottage Grove Road and Dempsey. We had some development in the past several years to the north, but we've already collected volume and speed at this intersection. No other major land use changes, so we're just going to update the crash history, looking at the 1 and 5 year crash history here. The next one is Fish Hatchery Road and Martin Street. This is a new intersection to this list, and the major driver of this intersection is we got an OCR order to add interconnect to the rectangular rapid flashing beacon at Fish Hatchery Road in the Cannonball Path. It's not really something we can do with rectangular rapid flashing beacons. They also suggested maybe adding a PED hybrid beacon, which is not something we want to do because now we would have a wig-wagging red signal that means drivers can stop and then proceed when it's safe, right next to a wig-wagging red railroad crossing, which means drivers need to stop because there's a train coming. We're not looking to add competing ideas in a dangerous situation. So actually what we're looking at doing is taking the Cannonball Path project that's kind of been ongoing in design the past few years, and running that path up Fish Hatchery Road with a diagonal bike signal at Martin Street to get bikes from the west side to the east side of the road. And then we can serve a few other users. There's a neighborhood to the west of Fish Hatchery Road, and so we can add like left turn arrows and provide some more controlled access to sides to that neighborhood, and maybe look at combining some private driveways to the east and incorporating them into the signal and just kind of clean up that corridor a little bit. So we've already collected speed and volume at this intersection, and we've already collected bike and pedestrian counts at the current RFB crossing at the railroad track, and we're just going to kind of assume those volumes would shift up to Martin Street and incorporate them into that analysis. Otherwise, we're looking at a 1 and 5 year crash history. We have some incoming development with I believe a police records or a police. I don't think it's a police station. I think it's just where they're going to keep police records at that corner. And then we're going to kind of create a model for how we would expect to operate that traffic signal and be able to report on that. And then the final one is the removal request. This is Odana Road in Potomac. Potomac is a 1 block street that just kind of tees into a business park. You can access other roads like Yellowstone and Grand Canyon, but Potomac itself doesn't really go into a neighborhood very deep. There's a development on the south side of the road that I suspect was maybe not generating a lot of traffic in the past few years. It's currently being redeveloped. They have access to that existing signal and will in the future when it's done. So I suspect that's kind of what's driving the request to remove it, because there's maybe in the past few years not been a lot of traffic there. We've already collected speed and volume on Odana and the side streets. We obviously don't have the traffic volumes for when the business or when the property to the south will be open and occupied, but we can kind of do our best estimation at those volumes. We want to look at the crash history at this intersection, and maybe even the corridor, maybe kind of compare it to some unsignalized intersections along Odana. We want to do a kind of side-by-side model of a two-way stop versus signal. And just because of the nature of Odana Road to the east here, it kind of curves and goes up a hill. We want to look at just what are the sight lines like if you're someone trying to pull out from the side street or trying to cross the street. Do you have good visibility? So those are the list of intersections that have been requested to be have a traffic signal added or removed this year. And that's it. We can take any questions.
Thanks, Yang, David, and Jerry. Aiden, just confirming, we got some email feedback, but I don't believe we have anybody registered to speak. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so comments or questions for Yang, David, or Jerry? Robbie, go ahead.
So I just wanted to clarify a couple things. The Henry Mall, are you considering, well, I think I have two questions there. First of all, you mentioned that there's a light at Randall and then a light at Babcock. So if you were to add one, would you remove the one at Babcock, or would you just have three really close together?
That's kind of part of the, I don't think we would look to remove one. It would be most likely to add or redirect.
Okay.
So some of the history here, we've had a similar request in the past several years. One thing we've done with the signal at Randall and University was to we had a leading ped interval on the side street, which kind of doesn't make sense because there is no conflict there. But that was just done to create longer all red so that the downstream crosswalk has a bigger gap. We've shifted that to a leading ped interval on the south side, which is also a leading bike interval. So there's like a 6 or 7 second all red interval at Randall that just creates a gap for the crosswalk in question here. So we've tried using what we already had to kind of help address this issue, but yeah, it came up again, so we're gonna take another look at it.
Okay, and then I guess my second question is, I'm assuming this would only be on the University Avenue side, and not the Campus Drive side, because there's already a light in front of mechanical engineering for eastbound traffic.
We're kind of looking at the total crosswalk. We're looking at both crossings, but we're kind of treating them as two different crossings. And so like one thing we observed when we were looking at the kind of the pedestrian counts was there's a lot more people crossing Henry and University than the Campus Johnson. And I think what we saw was a lot of people just kind of like opportunistically finding a gap, crossing, and then continuing east kind of down that triangle block, and then maybe using the signal at Randall. So we want to take that into consideration too, just like how are people using this? Is this are most of the people using this to get across both, or are they just trying to get to the middle? Are they starting their trip from the middle? Just and then yeah, we want to make sure whatever we're looking at here matches with what the OCR is going to kind of have us do at Babcock, because there may be some collaboration we can do and kind of maybe change this block a little bit more that would help this.
Okay. And then you said on Rose Road, I think you said that you had to also consider Old Sauk Road because they're so close together. I just wanted to clarify, because when I saw that on the list, I thought, wow, those two are really close together. Is that what I spaced out there for a minute, and so I wasn't sure that I had heard that correctly.
Yeah, anytime one of these two comes up, we always look at both of them because they're right on top of each other. And I think in the past when we've looked at it, it was almost like we can't, even if we wanted to signalize one, we couldn't just signalize one and leave the other one as is. You really have to treat them as one intersecting, kind of one big complex intersection, not two separate ones.
Yeah, I mean, people trying to turn left from Old Middleton onto Old Sauk, I mean, they back up onto into the intersection with Rose, so at peak hour, so.
Yeah, and one of our fear in the past has been people, you know, if we give a green light for people coming down the hill, is that gonna potentially cause any kind of crash concern where you're trying to make a fast right when you got a green and maybe it's in the wintertime, you come sliding, and then if you go straight, you're currently right where traffic is waiting. So yeah, there's a lot to consider here, but they are kind of together.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Those are my only questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Robbie. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Question about Milwaukee, Sprecher, and what was the other one? Thompson. As you said, they're linked together, and they're linked to this longer term plans of what WSDOT is doing with the interstate. And Tom Lynch gave a presentation on that maybe 2 meetings ago. And if I remember correctly, those interchanges are like really far into the future still, like mid 2030s, if I'm not mistaken. So I wonder about the timing, like, okay, if we collect data now, or even if we wait a year or two, is that still going to be too far with regard to WSDOT's timeline, or potentially creating a new interchange to be useful? Or maybe it's so far into the future what WSDOT is doing, and we should just go ahead based on current traffic patterns? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is pretty far in the future. I don't think we would necessarily make any decision thinking that this is going to be 5 years down the road. I think we are looking at whatever we look at now is more or less going to be the case for the next decade. Is kind of the timeline we're looking at. The Sprecher Milwaukee is probably going to be more of an intersection that won't go down. It will only go up in terms of volume and rankings if or when that interchange goes in. But the Thompson Milwaukee one, I could see a potential for that to get a little bit of a quieter intersection if an interchange goes in. But again, that would be 10 years down the road, or give or take a few years. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Harold. Denise, go ahead.
Audio now unmuted.
Yeah, thanks, Ann. Thanks, everybody, for the presentation. So this is more of a process question, just so that I kind of understand the pieces. So after you've done the study on this and you come back with recommendations, how does adding accessible pedestrian signals factor into how the signal is actually built? Is it now standard to put at least a walk signal at every traffic light? Kind of just how do we really make these signals usable for for people with disabilities and pedestrians in general?
That's a great question, Denise. We actually have been, with all of our newer installations, installing APS signals. ProWag has been, they're going to have a revision to it very soon.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. As part of that update is to install APS signals wherever possible. Obviously there could be limitations relative to how we can place equipment and the buttons, the speakers, etc. But overall, I mean, that's one of the things I know when I first started was kind of a big item that we talked about. And it was just one of these things where we just said I think it's time that we start doing this.
Yes.
And just start adding the APS. I mean, if you look at it too from a cost perspective, yes, it does cost more, but at the end of the day, it's such a small percentage of what we're doing anyway with the total cost of a traffic signal. So it really just makes sense to do that with the newer installations.
Well, I can't tell you how happy that makes me. If I could, I would be doing cartwheels across my office. So, it's really, that's a very powerful statement because you're exactly right. That they're going to get put in place by PROAG, but so many, a municipality, which I won't name the name of, was in a similar place. And even though the PROAG the writing was on the wall, they installed their signal heads without APS, and now they're pretty much stuck until those signal heads, become antiquated, and that could be several years. So thank you for being proactive about this. I really appreciate it.
Welcome.
Yang, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Anne, and thank you for that question, Denise. And David was correct that the new PROAG will require APS now for new installs, which is good. And I just want to add that it was actually already adopted by US DOT last month with an effective day, I believe, if I remember correctly, January 17th this year. So pretty soon that's actually become a requirement. Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's excellent. That should definitely help with accessibility. Something that we've been talking about quite a bit here at the Transportation Commission. Other comments or questions? Eric.
Just one quick note to follow up on that. So that the DOT adopting it, that as far as our operations are concerned, that means that any alterations to our bus stops beginning January 17th, unless final designs are approved or construction has begun, they will need to be PROAG compliant, but that only applies to bus stops right now. Until the DOJ, the United States Department of Justice, adopts it, it doesn't apply to the city as a whole. So we're kind of in a weird in-between time. So it's here. It's also here for a couple other federal grant programs. A couple other federal agencies have adopted as well. So there's certain grant funds that also have indicate that whatever we do with those grant funds has to be PROAG compliant. But it's not quite applicable throughout the whole city, but it's certainly worth anticipating and acting like it is.
Well, DOJ it's out for comment, is it, Eric? I mean, it's on its way, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to look at that, but yeah, it's.
Yeah.
You're now on mute.
Yeah, I think comment is closed at DOJ. So hopefully a decision soon.
Yeah. But it sounds like, Yang, we're acting like it is there, at least for the purposes of this, and I would assume for other things as well.
Yeah, we have already been installing APS for new traffic signals. So yeah,
Good.
So we'll continue to do that.
Good. Other comments or questions? We're going to have more updates with regard to PROAG. That's part of our work plan. So we'll hear more about that from folks as we move forward. Any other comments or questions? We would need a motion if you agree to approve staff's recommended list for further study. If you have comments or suggestions for changes to the list for further study, but we do need a motion to approve. Denise.
Yeah, I can so move.
Okay, there's a motion to approve staff's recommended list for further study. Robbie?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Denise, did you wish to speak to your motion? No? Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing no hands, I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. Okay, the motion is carried. Thanks, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you back again once the additional studies have been done. So thanks, Yang, David, and Jerry. Okay, we're going to move on to updates from TC members who are also members of other transportation related boards, committees, or commissions. And Lynn, I have you down as also as a member of the Disability Rights Commission. So if you have any updates from DRC, you know, this is the time where everybody who sits on another related body can provide updates so TC can stay in the loop. Does anybody have anything to report tonight? I'm not seeing anybody. Okay. So we will move on. I do not have any announcements tonight. So go on from that. In terms of suggestions for items on future agenda, the January 22nd meeting, we may have some ordinance changes that might get referred to us. Comprehensive Plan 2025 progress update. We've heard that that's coming our way. Certainly looking to see if the review, the updates to the Complete Green Streets Guide is ready. We're hoping that it is, but it's a big job, so we'll see how that goes. And also potentially update on transit equity for people with disabilities, director's report, and quarterly traffic safety report. And as usual, we have a whole list of things from TC members. I've been keeping that list updated and posting it in Legistar, and some of them we've done, and so I've left them on there with a strikeout so people can see we're making progress. One I think we've partially incorporated into the annual work plan. So anybody have any other items that they would like to see added to a future agenda for Transportation Commission? Denise.
Audio now on mute.
Thanks, Ann. So this probably is on the list. I haven't looked at it recently, but the ADA transition plan, just kind of checking on the status of making sure that that's on a future agenda.
That's what we did with that, Denise, is we put it into the work plan. So that we have, let me find it here. We have, once the Common Council has approved the City of Madison's updated ADA transition plan, then we would review the progress with regard to transportation related issues at least every 3 years, which I think is the plan at the city. Are you looking to hear more about that before it's recommended by the council in terms of an update as to where we're at?
Yeah, I think I would love to get an update on where we're at. So if we could build that in, yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay, and I know we can't talk about it tonight since it's not in the agenda, but Eric, did you have a comment?
In 8 seconds.
I think I can just provide an additional piece of information. You know, staff's been working on some of the materials for that, and I just got a copy of a draft for that I think on Monday that I have yet to look at, but I'll be looking at it in the next week or so. So just a little bit of information on that. That is moving along.
Okay. All right. Okay. Does that work for your update, Denise? Okay. All right, great. Anybody have any other items that you'd like to see added? And we work them in when we can. Okay. Then we would need a motion to adjourn. Robbie.
Move adjournment.
We have a second, please. Carl.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote because nobody has ever voted against adjourning. So thanks, everybody. Great meeting. We'll see you next time. Thanks.